Have you ever wondered what it takes to vanish into thin air? To walk away from a $15 million penthouse, a billionaire husband, and the life everyone dreams of? Isabella Sterling did exactly that at 5:47 on a Monday morning, 7 months pregnant, carrying nothing but a suitcase and a secret she'd been planning for 18 months. She left behind a 3-carat Danny Minori and a note with just 12 words. 12 words that would bring a powerful man to his knees and change everything. But here's what nobody expected. The mistress who thought she'd won. She never imagined what would happen next. The billionaire who had everything, he broke down in ways money couldn't fix. And the wife who disappeared? She was about to prove that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is save yourself. This is the true story of a woman who knew her worth, a man who learned too late, and a mistress who played a game she couldn't win. What happened next will shock you, inspire you, and maybe, just maybe, change how you see courage forever. Stay with me, because this story, it's about to get real. The security camera timestamp read 5:47 on a Monday morning in early spring. Isabella Sterling stepped through the gilded lobby doors of the Manhattan Tower she'd called home for 6 years, a single suitcase in her hand, and 7 months of pregnancy evident beneath her simple cotton dress. The doorman, Marcus, held the door with his customary professionalism. "Have a good trip, Mrs. Sterling," he said, his tone warm with the familiarity of countless morning greetings. Isabella turned back, offering him a small, sad smile that he would remember for years to come. "I will. Thank you for everything, Marcus. For all of it." Something in her voice made him pause, but before he could question it, she was sliding into the waiting yellow cab. The taxi merged into the sparse pre-dawn traffic, carrying her away from the $15 million penthouse, away from the cold perfection of her gilded cage, away from the man who had loved the idea of her but never quite managed to love the reality. 2 hours later, Richard Sterling reached across the king-size bed, his hands seeking the warmth of his wife's body in that unconscious gesture of morning routine. His fingers found only cold Egyptian cotton sheets, expensive and empty. He sat up slowly, frowning. In 6 years of marriage, Isabella had never failed to be there when he woke, usually with coffee already prepared, moving through their home with that quiet grace he had always admired. The silence this morning felt different, heavier, wrong. "Isabella?" His voice echoed through the master suite. "Nothing." Richard rose, walking through the penthouse with growing unease. The master bathroom revealed her toothbrush missing, a detail so small it sent ice down his spine. In her closet, everything appeared untouched, perfectly organized, as if staged for a magazine photo shoot rather than actual life. Downstairs, the morning sun slanted through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in air that felt too still, too quiet. On the marble kitchen island, propped against an obscenely expensive fruit bowl, sat a single sheet of cream-colored stationery. Her personal stationery, the kind she used for thank-you notes to charity committee members and birthday wishes to his business associates. His name was written on the front in her elegant, looping script. Richard picked it up with hands that had closed billion-dollar deals without trembling, but shook now as he unfolded the single page. The message was brutally short. "I am gone. Please do not look for me. Our son deserves a mother who knows her own name." Beneath the note, catching the morning light with cold fire, lay her wedding ring. 3 carats, flawless, suddenly meaningless. Richard read the words again, then again. His mind refused to process them, kept circling back to impossible questions. Gone where? Why? What did she mean about their son? About knowing her own name? He grabbed his phone, fingers clumsy as he pulled up her contact. The call went straight to voicemail. Her voice, warm and measured, invited him to leave a message. He couldn't speak, just ended the call and tried again. Straight to voicemail. Her mother, Eleanor. She'd know something she had to know. The voicemail that answered was cheerful, excited even. Eleanor Marlowe announcing she was on a 2-month Norwegian cruise, completely unreachable back in 8 weeks. The convenience of the timing struck him like a physical blow. Richard sank onto the floor, his back against the kitchen island, still clutching the note. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt genuine fear. Not the calculated risk of a deal gone wrong, not the manageable anxiety of market fluctuations. This was primal, terrifying, the feeling of something essential being ripped away. "Where's my wife?" he whispered to the empty penthouse. "Where's my son? Let me tell you how we got here. Let me tell you about the perfect life that wasn't perfect at all, about ambition that consumed everything it touched, and about a woman who loved a man enough to leave him. Because sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do." 48 hours earlier, Isabella had woken in that same bed, alone as always. The view of Central Park stretched before her, 14 floors up, the early morning joggers looking like ants from this height. Beautiful, distant, unreal. She found Richard's note on his pillow, written on his personal stationery with the Sterling Enterprises letterhead. "Early meeting, back late, R." No "good morning," no "how are you feeling," not even love before his initial. Just the facts, efficient and cold. At 7 months pregnant, Isabella moved through the penthouse with careful deliberation, one hand instinctively protecting the swell of her belly. The baby, their son, kicked against her palm as if to say good morning. At least someone noticed she was there. She made herself breakfast, scrambled eggs, and whole wheat toast. The pregnancy books recommended nutrition. "Good morning, little one," she murmured to her belly. "Just you and me, as always." Her phone buzzed with a notification from a society blog she followed more out of habit than interest. The headline made her pause. "Manhattan's power players at gallery opening." The photo showed Richard in his tuxedo, looking devastatingly handsome as always, his head tilted toward a striking redhead in an emerald green dress. They were laughing, comfortable, intimate in the way that spoke of inside jokes and shared secrets. The caption identified the woman as Chloe Winters, architect, recently contracted by Sterling Enterprises for the Westwood project. Isabella zoomed in on the photo, studying the body language, the way Richard's hand hovered near the small of Chloe's back, the way she leaned into his space. That's when Isabella noticed something on her nightstand, a single emerald earring, the same shade as the dress in the photo. It sat there among her pregnancy vitamins and water glass, left carelessly or perhaps deliberately. The third piece of evidence in his many months. Isabella picked up the earring, felt its weight in her palm. She should have been angry, should have been hurt, should have felt something. Instead, she felt only a vast, echoing tiredness, the kind of exhaustion that comes not from lack of sleep, but from the slow erosion of hope. "This was the third time I'd found evidence," she would later recall. "The third time I said nothing. Because I'd stopped caring enough to fight about it. I'd stopped mattering, even to myself." She looked at her reflection in the bedroom mirror. Designer maternity wear, expertly applied makeup, hair styled in soft waves. She looked like the perfect society wife, the kind featured in magazines about Manhattan's elite. Polished, perfect, completely empty. I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror anymore, she thought. She was everything I'd never wanted to be, and nothing I'd ever hoped to become. But that was about to change, because Isabella Marlowe Sterling had been planning her escape for 18 months, and in 48 hours, Mrs. Sterling would cease to exist. Across town in a sleek modernist apartment in Chelsea, Chloe Winters sat at her glass desk, painting her nails blood red while on speakerphone with her closest friend from architecture school. "He promised he'd tell her after the Westwood deal closes," Chloe said, examining her work with satisfaction. "She's just the incubator. I'm the partner, the one who actually gets what he's building." On her laptop screen, she had a folder open, filled with photos of Isabella at various charity events. Always perfectly dressed, always alone, always wearing that polite, distant smile that never quite reached her eyes. "She's beautiful. I'll give her that," Chloe continued. "But beauty without ambition is just decoration. And Richard Sterling doesn't need another decoration. He needs someone who can match him, someone who wants to build an empire, not just live in one." She closed the photo folder and opened a document titled Operation Sterling. It was organized like a business plan, because that's exactly what it was. Chloe had been born poor in rural Pennsylvania, had clawed her way through state school on scholarships and spite, had built her architecture career one strategic move at a time. Richard Sterling wasn't just a man to her. He was the ultimate acquisition, The final piece that would cement her transformation from trailer park trash to Manhattan elite. The timeline was detailed, methodical. Week 1, schedule Richard's meetings to conflict with Isabella's doctor appointments. Make her feel abandoned. Week 3, leave personal items at the penthouse. Let her find them. Watch her say nothing. Week 6, gallery opening, green dress, make sure photographers capture us together. Week 8, leak story to press about Sterling marriage troubles. Week 10, position myself as the supportive colleague, the understanding friend, the future. Every queen needs to be dethroned, Chloe murmured to herself, adding a note to her timeline. I'm just accelerating the inevitable. What Chloe didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Isabella had stopped being a queen weeks ago. She'd already decided to abdicate, to vanish, to choose freedom over a crown that had become a collar. The throne Chloe was fighting for was already empty, and the man she wanted, he was about to break in ways neither woman could have predicted. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back further, to the beginning, to when Richard Sterling first saw Isabella Marlowe and decided she would be his. 8 years before Isabella disappeared, she was a different person entirely. At 24, she worked at a legal aid office in Brooklyn, defending clients who couldn't afford justice, fighting landlords and corporations with nothing but her passion and her newly minted law degree. Her office was cramped, her salary barely covered rent, and she'd never been happier. On a Tuesday afternoon in late autumn, Isabella sat across from a young mother named Maria, reviewing an eviction case. The landlord, a real estate company called Westwood Properties, was trying to force out rent-controlled tenants to renovate and flip the building. Mrs. Marlowe, if we lose, my kids have nowhere to go, Maria said, her voice breaking. Please, you're my last hope. Isabella reached across her battered desk and squeezed Maria's hand. We're not going to lose, I promise you. Justice shouldn't be just for people who can afford it. They won that case. Isabella stood in housing court and dismantled Westwood's arguments piece by piece, citing precedents and regulations until the judge ruled in Maria's favor. When it was over, Maria hugged her, crying with relief. Thank you, Ms. Marlowe. You saved our home. Isabella felt it then, that sense of purpose, of making a real difference. That's what I'm here for. That same evening, still riding the high of victory, Isabella worked a catering job at a Manhattan charity gala. It was how she supplemented her legal aid salary, how she made rent and loan payments. She wore a crisp white shirt and black slacks, carrying trays of champagne through rooms that cost more to decorate than her entire year's salary. That's when Richard Sterling entered the ballroom. He was 30 years old, already making waves in Manhattan real estate, the son of old money who was busy making new money. Handsome in that sharp-edged way of men who've never doubted their place in the world. Magnetic, dangerous. He was talking to a senator when he turned, and his elbow caught Isabella's tray. Champagne splashed across his Tom Ford suit, and time seemed to stop. I'm so sorry, Isabella gasped, grabbing napkins. Let me help. No, entirely my fault, Richard said, but he wasn't looking at the stain. He was looking at her. Really looking, with an intensity that made her breath catch. I'm Richard. Isabella. She was acutely aware of the gulf between them, her catering uniform, his $1,000 suit, the way everyone in the room seemed to orbit him like planets around a sun. You don't belong in that uniform, he said, and her spine stiffened. Excuse me? You belong in a gown, as a guest, not staff. He said it with complete certainty, as if he could see through the uniform to something underneath. Isabella lifted her chin. And what makes you think I'd want that? Richard smiled then, genuinely surprised. Because everyone wants that, don't they? Not everyone measures success in dollar signs, she trailed off deliberately. Sterling, Richard Sterling, and I'd like to prove you wrong. Dinner? She should have said no, should have recognized the warning signs, the assumption that she could be won like a business deal. But he was looking at her like she mattered, like she was fascinating and complex and worth knowing. When you've spent years being invisible, that kind of attention is intoxicating. One dinner, she agreed. One dinner became two, became a weekend in Paris, became a whirlwind 6 months that felt like a fairy tale. Richard took her to restaurants where reservations were impossible to get, He asked about her work, actually listened when she explained housing law and tenant rights. He bought her law books as gifts, not jewelry, seeming to understand what mattered to her. He met her mother Eleanor in Boston, charming the no-nonsense retired nurse with his manners and apparent sincerity. Eleanor pulled Isabella aside before they left. "Are you sure about this, baby?" Eleanor asked, her eyes searching Isabella's face. "That world, those people, they change you. Make sure you know who you are before you step into it." "He loves me, Mom," Isabella said, believing it completely. "He sees me. Make sure he still sees you in 5 years." 6 months after that first meeting, Richard proposed at sunset in Central Park, the skyline glittering behind them. The diamond was massive, flawless, and Isabella said yes because she thought this was what happiness looked like. Their wedding was the society event of the season. Isabella wore vintage Chantilly lace, carried peonies, and felt like she was stepping into a dream. In the photos, she looks radiant, glowing, completely unaware that she was trading one life for another, one identity for something smaller, more polished, more acceptable. The erosion happened slowly. It always does. Year 1. Richard missed her bar exam results because he was closing a deal in Tokyo. Isabella passed with honors and celebrated alone in their penthouse, champagne for one, wondering why success felt so hollow. Year 2. Isabella told Richard she'd been offered a position at the ACLU. His response came between bites of steak at a Michelin-starred restaurant. "Why would you do that? The hours are brutal and the pay is nothing. I can just donate to them instead." "You don't need to work." "It's not about the money," Isabella tried to explain. "It's about making a difference. You make a difference by being at my side at events, by supporting what I'm building. That matters more than some nonprofit that's always going to be struggling." Isabella let it drop because she was tired from a charity luncheon and a gala the night before and didn't have the energy to fight. That's how it starts, with small surrenders. Year 3, she volunteered at her old legal aid office once a week. Richard barely noticed, and when he did, his comment was casual but cutting. "Those people will drain you emotionally. You're meant for better things." Year 4, Isabella stopped mentioning her dreams. Richard stopped asking if she had any. Year 5, Isabella discovered she was pregnant. She told Richard over breakfast, nervous and hopeful. His face lit up, but his words sent ice through her veins. Finally, an heir. Not a baby, not our child. An heir. A continuation of the Sterling legacy. A possession before it was even born. Year 6, Isabella was a ghost in her own home. She attended charity events, smiled for photos, organized dinner parties, and slowly disappeared. The woman in the mirror was everything she'd never wanted to be and nothing she'd ever hoped to become. At 7 months pregnant, Isabella found a hotel receipt in Richard's jacket pocket. The Parker Hotel, the night he'd said he was working late on the Philadelphia deal. She called the hotel. "Yes, we have a reservation history for Mr. Sterling. Would you like me to confirm the dates?" "That's not necessary, thank you." She sat in her walk-in closet, crying quietly so the staff wouldn't hear. Then she stopped crying, wiped her tears, and pulled out an old legal pad from her law school days. At the top of the page, in her careful handwriting, she wrote, "Exit strategy." That was 18 months ago. Since then, Isabella had been planning her escape with the same methodical precision she'd once applied to legal cases. She'd become very good at being invisible in her marriage, and now she would use that invisibility to disappear completely. Every day, she withdrew $500 from the ATM, the daily limit. At grocery stores, she'd get cash back, $50 or $100 at a time. She hid the money in tampon boxes, inside old book spines, in the lining of purses she never used. Richard never looked at those things. He barely looked at her anymore. She opened a bank account under her maiden name at a small branch in Brooklyn, far from their usual Manhattan haunts. The female banker gave her a knowing look when Isabella said, "My husband doesn't need to know about this account. It's for personal reasons." "I understand," the banker said quietly. "Your name only on the account." Isabella researched on library computers using incognito mode, clearing her history. She Googled small coastal towns, Oregon, Washington, places where Isabella Sterling would never be found because she'd never been there, had no connections, no ties. Places where Anna Marlowe could start fresh. She bought a burner phone with cash, rented a post office box in Queens, ordered identification documents from the dark web, a skill she'd learned from a legal aid client years ago. She practiced signing Anna Marlowe until it looked natural, until it felt real. When she discovered she was pregnant, the planning became urgent. Richard's reaction, that word heir, told her everything she needed to know. Her son, because the ultrasound revealed a boy, would be born into a museum, not a home. She couldn't let that happen. She packed a single suitcase, hiding it in the back of her cavernous closet. Jeans, t-shirts, her old legal aid hoodie from Brooklyn, ultrasound photos, her mother's locket, the constitutional law textbook from her first year of law school, worn and loved. Nothing Richard had bought her. Nothing that belonged to Mrs. Sterling. She called her mother from the burner phone. "Mom, if I disappear, don't look for me. I'm safe, I promise." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. "Baby, what's wrong?" "Everything, but I'm fixing it." "Does this have to do with Richard?" "It has to do with me, with who I was before I forgot." "Where will you go?" "I can't tell you, but I'll be okay. I love you." "I love you too, baby. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you." 2 weeks before her planned departure, Isabella had her final prenatal appointment. Richard had promised to come, to see the ultrasound, to find out if the baby was a boy or a girl. She sat in the waiting room watching other couples, the way the fathers held their partners' hands, asked questions, cared. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard, sent 15 minutes before the appointment. "Can't make it, closing Westwood, you understand." No apology, no, "I'm sorry," just the assumption that she'd accept it, that his work mattered more than this moment. The doctor smiled sympathetically. "Where's Dad?" "Working," Isabella said, the word tasting like ash. "Always working." The ultrasound screen flickered to life. "It's a boy," the doctor announced. "Healthy, strong heartbeat. Everything looks perfect." Isabella's hand pressed against the screen, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, baby. I'm your mom, and I promise you'll know what love feels like. Real love, not this hollow imitation." That same night, while Isabella was alone in the penthouse, Richard took Chloe to dinner. They went to Per Se, the same restaurant where he'd proposed to Isabella. Chloe wore red, the color of ambition and blood and warning signs. They talked about the Westwood deal, about the future, about plans that didn't include the pregnant wife at home. "When are you telling her?" Chloe asked, swirling wine in her glass. "After Westwood closes. The prenup is airtight. She gets nothing. She'll leave quietly." "And if she doesn't?" Richard's smile was cold, certain. "Then my lawyers will make her wish she had." Chloe leaned closer. "I'm not her, you know. I won't sit home and look pretty. I'll build this empire with you." "I know," Richard said. "That's why you're here." They toasted to new beginnings, completely unaware that across town, Isabella was writing the last entry in her exit strategy notebook. Tomorrow night, she would cook Richard dinner. She would watch him one final time, memorize the details of the man she'd loved, the man who'd forgotten how to love her back. And then, in the dark hours before dawn, she would disappear. Across the restaurant, sitting at a table with his own business associates, Robert Sinclair watched Richard and Chloe toast. Robert was a Sterling Enterprises board member, Richard's mentor, and increasingly, his conscience. He saw the intimacy between Richard and Chloe, saw the casual cruelty of Richard bringing his mistress to the restaurant where he proposed to his wife. Robert thought about Isabella, about how her light had dimmed over the years, how she'd become a shadow of the passionate young lawyer Richard had first introduced to the board. He thought about calling her, warning her, but what would he say? What could anyone say that she didn't already know? Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is step back and let people save themselves. Robert hoped Isabella had the strength to save herself, because God knew Richard wasn't going to do it for her. The stage was set. The pieces were in place. In 48 hours, Isabella Sterling would vanish, and nothing would ever be the same. Saturday night, 10 o'clock. Isabella stood in the penthouse kitchen, 7 months pregnant, and cooking dinner for the first time in months. The recipe was coq au vin, Richard's favorite, the dish she'd made on their honeymoon in Paris when they'd stayed in that tiny apartment in the Marais and pretended to be normal people for a week. She'd sent the staff home early, wanting privacy for this final evening. The kitchen smelled of wine and herbs, familiar and bittersweet. Her hands moved through the motions automatically, muscle memory from a different life, while her mind cataloged details. The way afternoon lights slanted through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the hum of the city 14 floors below, the weight of her wedding ring, heavy with history and hollow promises. Richard came home at 10:15, reeking of Chloe's jasmine perfume. He didn't notice Isabella had cooked. Didn't notice her at all, really. His phone was pressed to his ear, his voice sharp with business efficiency. Chloe, did you send me the updated Westwood contracts? Yes. Bring them tomorrow. We need to finalize before Monday. Isabella set his plate down gently. Richard glanced at it, nodded vaguely, and continued his call. She sat across from him, watching him eat while discussing business, watching him exist in a world where she was merely background noise. Finally, between bites, he looked up. This is good. What is it? Coco vin, your favorite from our Paris trip. Richard's expression was blank for a moment, as if searching his memory for a file that had been deleted. Great. He didn't remember Paris, didn't remember the tiny apartment, the morning market, the way they'd laughed when Isabella burned the first attempt at this dish. He'd forgotten, or maybe he'd never really been present even then. Isabella memorized his face, the sharp line of his jaw, the gray at his temples that made him look distinguished, the way his eyes focused everywhere except on her. This was the last time she'd see him, and she needed to remember why she was leaving. After dinner, Richard disappeared into his study for conference calls with Tokyo. Isabella cleared the plates, moving through the penthouse like a ghost saying goodbye to a mausoleum. She paused at the nursery door, looking at the custom crib, the designer mobile, the perfect emptiness of it all. I'm sorry I couldn't make this beautiful prison work for you, baby, she whispered to her belly. But I promise you'll have something better. You'll have love. Real love. At 1 in the morning, Isabella began her first attempt at escape. She pulled her packed suitcase from the closet, her hands trembling. Every sound seemed magnified. The rustle of fabric, the click of the suitcase latches, her own breathing, too fast, too loud. Richard's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Isabella froze, her heart hammering. If he woke up now, if he saw the suitcase, it would all be over. She'd have to explain, or lie, or worst of all, stay. The phone screen illuminated his face with cold blue light. A text from Chloe. Can't wait for tomorrow. Heart emoji. Richard stirred, rolling over. Isabella, what are you doing? Every muscle in Isabella's body locked. Just organizing the closet. Can't sleep. Baby's kicking. Take Ambien, Richard mumbled, not opening his eyes. In my medicine cabinet. He fell back asleep within seconds, secure in the knowledge that his wife would still be there when he woke. He'd never considered that she might leave, because in his world, people didn't walk away from Richard Sterling. They competed for his attention, fought for his time, treasured every scrap of acknowledgement he offered. Isabella stood frozen for 30 minutes, watching him sleep, waiting for her heart to stop pounding. Then she carefully put the suitcase back, rescheduling her escape for the deeper hours of night when even Richard's unconscious mind wouldn't register her movements. At 4:30 in this morning, Isabella dressed in jeans and her old legal aid hoodie, clothes that made her look like anyone, like no one. She pulled her hair into a ponytail, wore no makeup, and looked in the mirror one final time. The woman staring back was recognizable, finally. Not Mrs. Sterling, just Isabella, just herself. She made one last walk through the penthouse, allowing herself a moment in the nursery. Her hand traced the edge of the crib that would never be used, the mobile that would never spin over her son's sleeping face. In the kitchen, she placed her carefully written note on the marble island. The cream stationery felt substantial in her hands, expensive paper for words that would shatter a world. I am gone. Please do not look for me. Our son deserves a mother who knows her own name. She placed her wedding ring on top of the note, 3 carats of promises broken and dreams deferred. It caught the pre-dawn light filtering through the windows, cold fire, meaningless now. Isabella took one thing from her old life, a photo from their honeymoon. Not because she wanted to remember Richard, but because she wanted to remember the woman she'd been then, hopeful and whole, before she'd let herself be diminished. "I'm not stealing your son," she whispered to the sleeping man in the bedroom above. "I'm saving him from becoming you." At 4:45, Isabella stepped into the elevator. Her suitcase felt light in her hand, everything she needed for a new life compressed into one bag. The elevator descended, each floor a step further from Mrs. Sterling, closer to Anna Marlowe. The lobby was nearly empty. Just the night doorman, not Marcus, who would be on duty in an hour, but a younger man named Tom who didn't know the residents as well. He looked up from his phone, surprised. "Mrs. Sterling? Little early for you." Isabella's mouth went dry. She hadn't planned for this. For questions from someone who wasn't supposed to be here. Couldn't sleep, going to Connecticut to visit a friend. Surprise visit. Tom glanced at her suitcase, then at her face. Something in his expression suggested he saw more than he should. "Want me to call Mr. Sterling's driver?" "No." The word came out too sharp, too desperate. Isabella forced herself to breathe, to smile. "I mean, I already called a cab. Don't want to wake Richard. He needs his sleep." Tom held her gaze for a moment too long. Isabella's heart raced. He knew something was wrong. He had to know. But then he nodded slowly. "Have a safe trip, Mrs. Sterling." A yellow cab pulled up outside. "Wow," summoned by her wave. Isabella walked through the doors Marcus would hold in an hour, walked out of her old life into the gray pre-dawn of a New York morning. She didn't look back. The cab driver loaded her suitcase without comment. "Where to?" "Port Authority. Bus terminal." At 5:15 in the morning, Port Authority bus terminal was a purgatory of fluorescent lights and tired travelers. Isabella approached the ticket counter, her hood up, sunglasses on despite the darkness. The clerk was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and the exhausted look of someone working the graveyard shift. "One-way ticket to Chicago," Isabella said. The clerk raised an eyebrow. "That's a 20-hour ride, honey. You sure?" Isabella glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see Richard storming through the terminal, or worse, police officers ready to stop her. "I'm sure." She paid in cash, bills counted out carefully from her hidden stash. No credit cards, no paper trail. The ticket felt like a passport in her hand, permission to cross into a new country, a new identity. At a newsstand, Isabella saw her own face staring back at her from a magazine cover. Manhattan's Most Elegant Wives. She looked like a stranger in the photo, polished and perfect and hollow. She pulled her hood lower and turned away. A businessman in an expensive suit did a double take. "Excuse me, are you?" The bus departure was announced. Gate 12. Isabella ran, her pregnant body ungainly, her suitcase banging against her leg. She didn't stop until she was on the bus, in the back row, hidden behind sunglasses and a decade of learning how to be invisible. The bus pulled away from the terminal at 5:47, the exact time the security cameras showed her leaving the building. As Manhattan's skyline receded in the rear window, Isabella felt something inside her crack open. Not breaking, but blooming. The kind of pain that comes with healing, with breaking out of a cast you didn't know you were wearing. The woman next to her, older with kind eyes, noticed her tears. "Running from something, honey?" Isabella wiped her eyes. "Is it that obvious? I did the same thing 30 years ago. Husband who thought I was furniture. Best decision I ever made." "What if I'm making a mistake?" The woman smiled. "What if you're not?" The bus rolled west, carrying Anna Marlowe toward a future that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. Behind her, Mrs. Isabella Sterling ceased to exist. Ahead, somewhere in the vast expanse of America, was a small coastal town where she could be no one. Or maybe, finally, herself. In the Penmount house, Richard Sterling slept peacefully, unaware that his world had ended 2 hours ago. He would wake in 90 minutes to cold sheets in a colder reality. He would find the note, read it again, and begin a descent that would break him in ways $1 billion couldn't fix. But Isabella didn't think about that. She thought about her son, moving inside her, safe and loved and free. She thought about a future written in her own hand, in her own name. She thought about a small bookstore in Oregon that she'd found online that was hiring, that might have a room above it for a pregnant woman with Kosharu and a new identity. Mrs. Sterling was gone, but Anna Marlowe was just beginning. The bus drove through the dawn, and Isabella watched the sun rise on the first day of the rest of her life. Richard's alarm jolted him awake at 7:52. Automated blinds retracted with a mechanical whisper, flooding the bedroom with morning light. His hand reached across the bed in that unconscious gesture of 6 years of marriage, seeking the warmth of Isabella's body. Cold sheets, empty space, he frowned. In their entire marriage, Isabella had never failed to be there when he woke. She was as reliable as sunrise, as constant as the tide of his ambition. Coffee would be waiting on his nightstand, prepared exactly how he liked it. She'd be dressed already, moving through their morning routine with that quiet efficiency he'd always appreciated. Not this morning. Isabella? His voice sounded strange in the silence. Uncertain in a way Richard Sterling was never uncertain. No response. He rose, pulling on his robe, moving through the master suite. The bathroom was empty, pristine. In her closet, everything appeared perfectly organized, untouched, as if staged for a photo shoot. But her toothbrush was missing from its holder. A detail so small and wrong it sent ice down his spine. Isabella Bobby. Louder now, an edge of panic creeping in. The penthouse was immaculate. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes not from peace, but from absence. Richard descended the floating glass staircase, his bare feet silent on the expensive marble floors. In the kitchen, morning sun illuminated the island. And there it was, cream stationery propped against the fruit bowl, his name in her elegant script. Richard picked it up slowly, as if it might explode. Inside, her message was devastatingly brief. I am gone. Please do not look for me. Our son deserves a mother who knows her own name. Beneath the note lay her wedding ring, catching the light with cold brilliance. He read the words 3 times. 4. His mind refused to process them, kept circling back to impossible questions. Gone where? Why? What did she mean about knowing her own name? It was Sterling. Her name was Isabella Sterling. She was his wife, the mother of his heir. She couldn't just be gone. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands, pulled up her contact. The call went straight to voicemail. Her voice, warm and measured, invited him to leave a message. He hung up and tried again. Straight to voicemail, again and again, her mother. Eleanor would know. She had to know. The voicemail that answered was cheerful, completely at odds with the nightmare unfolding in Richard's kitchen. Eleanor Marlowe announcing a 2-month Norwegian cruise, completely unreachable, back in 8 weeks. Too convenient, too planned. Richard called the doorman. Marcus, did you see Mrs. Sterling leave this morning? Yes, sir, 5:30. Said she was visiting a friend in Connecticut. Had a suitcase. She seemed fine, sir. Calm. Calm. The word echoed in Richard's mind. Not upset, not fleeing, not running. Calm. As if she'd been planning this. As if she'd known exactly what she was doing. Richard sank to the floor, his back against the kitchen island, note still clutched in his hand. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt genuine, primal fear. The kind that has nothing to do with business, deals, or market crashes, and everything to do with losing something essential, something irreplaceable. Where's my wife? He whispered to the empty apartment. Where's my son? At 9 in the morning, Chloe let herself into the penthouse. She had a key now, had had one for months. She carried coffee and croissants and wore her victory like perfume. Richard, darling, you weren't answering calls. She stopped when she saw him, still on the floor, still in his robe, looking broken in a way she'd never seen. In all their months together, Richard Sterling had been composed, powerful, in control. This man looked shattered. What happened? Richard held out the note without speaking. Chloe read it quickly, her expression cycling through surprise to something that looked almost like excitement before she caught herself and arranged her features into concern. Gone? What do you mean gone? She left, took our son, disappeared. His voice was hollow, mechanical. Chloe sat beside him, her mind already racing through implications. This was it. This was the moment she'd been engineering for months. Isabella was gone, clearing the path for Chloe to step into the role of Mrs. Sterling. She just needed to play this correctly. Oh my God, Richard! The baby, is it safe? Should we call the police? And tell them what? My pregnant wife left of her own free will? She's an adult. Chloe placed a careful hand on his arm. Richard, has she seemed unstable lately? Pregnancy hormones can cause severe mood swings, even breakdowns. Richard grasped at the explanation like a drowning man reaching for debris. She has been withdrawn. Quiet. We should keep this private, for her sake. If the press finds out, it could hurt her reputation. People might judge her. The words were manipulative, designed to protect Chloe's position as much as anything else. If the world knew Isabella left, they'd ask why. They'd discover Chloe. They'd see her as the villain rather than the victor. Richard nodded, not seeing the calculation in her eyes. You're right, keep it quiet. What neither of them knew was that across town in Brooklyn, a private investigator was already reviewing the case files Isabella had left in her old apartment. The files that documented Westwood Properties' pattern of tenant harassment. The files that showed Richard Sterling's company systematically displacing vulnerable families. The files that would eventually reveal that Richard's wife hadn't just left him. She'd been fighting against him, secretly, for years. At 10 in the morning, Richard was in his office making calls. His assistant had never seen him like this. Disheveled and desperate, the veneer of control completely stripped away. Get me Frank Harrison, the best investigator in the city. I don't care what he costs. By noon, Frank Harrison sat in Richard's office, a grizzled former detective with cynical eyes and 3 decades of finding people who didn't want to be found. He reviewed the facts with professional detachment while Richard paced. Your wife opened a bank account 18 months ago under her maiden name, Marlowe. She's been withdrawing cash systematically. 500 a day, additional amounts at stores. Total accumulated over that time, approximately $182,000. Richard stopped pacing. What? She bought a bus ticket this morning. Newark Station 547, paid cash. Route has 87 stops between here and Chicago. She was calm, disguised, and very careful. Harrison slid a photo across the desk. Security footage showing Isabella in jeans and a hoodie, unrecognizable as the elegant Mrs. Sterling. Mr. Sterling, your wife didn't panic and run. This was military-grade planning. She's been preparing to leave you for over a year. The words hit Richard like physical blows. Over a year. While he'd been closing deals, building his empire, sleeping with Chloe, Isabella had been plotting her escape. She'd been living with him, eating meals with him, sleeping beside him, and all while systematically erasing herself from his life. Find her, Richard said, his voice dangerous. I don't care what it costs. Find my wife. Harrison's expression was almost pitying. Mr. Sterling, people this prepared don't want to be found, and family courts favor mothers, especially pregnant ones fleeing difficult situations. I gave her everything. Did you, though? The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Over the next week, Richard descended into a hell of his own making. Harrison's investigation revealed layer after layer of Isabella's secret life. The bank account, the retained apartment in Brooklyn she'd never sold, just rented out, the post office boxes in Queens and Missouri, and finally Portland. They were always 2 steps behind her, chasing a ghost who had become very good at disappearing. Richard stopped going to the office. He missed meetings, left calls unreturned. At night, he drove through Brooklyn at 3 in the morning, parking outside Isabella's old apartment building, staring at dark windows as if she might materialize. A homeless man approached his car one night. You okay, buddy? I lost my wife. The homeless man nodded sagely. Maybe she lost you first. The words haunted Richard. He began to see his marriage differently, as if someone had adjusted a lens that had been blurred for years. He remembered the way Isabella's smile had faded over time, the way she'd stopped mentioning her work at Legal Aid, the way she'd become quieter, smaller, less present until she was barely there at all. He'd done that. He'd taken a woman who defended the voiceless and turned her into decorative silence. He'd taken her fire and smothered it with indifference and ambition and the casual cruelty of someone who'd stopped seeing the person in front of him. Day 12, Harrison found the lead in Ohio, a prepaid card purchase, shipped to Herman, Missouri. Richard flew there immediately, unable to wait, desperate for any connection to his vanished wife. Herman was a town of 2,400 people, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers were noticed. The post office clerk remembered Anna Marlowe. Nice lady, quiet, closed the box 3 weeks ago, mail forwarding to Portland, Oregon. Richard sat in his rental car in Herman's town square and screamed, just screamed until his throat was raw, until he'd exorcised some fraction of the rage and fear and grief consuming him. They were chasing ghosts. She was always ahead, always gone, always 2,000 miles away from wherever he was looking. By day 14, Chloe was moving into the penthouse in earnest. A toothbrush here, work files there, slowly colonizing the space Isabella had abandoned. She ordered plans drawn up for a complete renovation. Modern, bold, nothing like Isabella's understated elegance. "Mrs. Sterling isn't coming back," she told the young architect. "And when she's officially gone, there'll be a new Mrs. Sterling." And what Chloe didn't see was Robert Sinclair watching from his office across town, tracking phone records, piecing together her manipulation. Robert had been Richard's mentor, but he was increasingly becoming his conscience. And what he was discovering about Chloe Winters would change everything. Day 18 arrived, the quarterly board meeting for Sterling Enterprises. The Westwood deal was closing, Richard's crowning achievement, and he was supposed to present to the board with triumph and vision. Instead, he arrived looking like a man who hadn't slept in days, because he hadn't. Unshaven, wrinkled suit, eyes hollow with exhaustion. The board members exchanged worried glances. Robert pulled him aside. "Richard, we should postpone this. You're not—" "I'm fine," Richard snapped. "Let's do this." The presentation started well enough. Richard stood at the head of the table, the Westwood projections on the screen behind him. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Westwood acquisition represents—" He lost his train of thought. The numbers on the screen blurred. All he could see was Isabella's note. "Our son deserves a mother who knows her own name." "Richard?" A board member's voice, concerned. "The profit margins? The— what? Are you feeling all right?" Richard sat heavily. The room spun. 15 faces stared at him with various degrees of concern and confusion. "We're all worried about Isabella," another board member said gently. "Have you heard from her?" Something in Richard snapped. He stood abruptly, laughing, the sound unhinged and wrong. "You want to know about Isabella? I'll tell you about Isabella." His voice rose, cracking. "She's gone. Gone. And I don't know where. I don't know if my son is alive. I don't know why she left. I don't know anything." He tried to continue standing, but staggered, grabbing the table edge. "I had everything. I built an empire, and she... The sobs came suddenly, violently, full body shaking, ugly crying that echoed in the silent boardroom. Richard Sterling, Manhattan real estate billionaire, collapsed into his chair and wept like a child. "I don't even know if she's okay. What if something happened? What if the baby—" 15 board members sat frozen in horror. This was supposed to be a coronation, the celebration of the Westwood deal. Instead, they were witnessing the complete psychological collapse of their CEO. In the back of the room, Chloe watched with growing horror. This wasn't the man she'd wanted. This broken, sobbing wreck wasn't the apex predator she'd aimed to conquer. This was pathetic. Robert stood, taking control. "Meeting adjourned. Everyone out. Now." The board filed out in uncomfortable silence. Only Robert remained, watching Richard cry into his hands, destroyed by the absence of a woman he'd never really seen. "I loved her," Richard whispered. "I loved her." "No," Robert said quietly. "You loved the idea of her. You loved how she looked on your arm. You never loved her, because you never knew her." The words were brutal and true, and they broke something fundamental in Richard Sterling. That evening, he was admitted to the hospital for exhaustion, dehydration, and what the doctors delicately termed a severe psychiatric crisis. Chloe visited, playing the role of concerned partner. But when Richard looked at her, all he saw was someone who wanted what he'd built, not who he was, just like he'd done to Isabella. "Get out," he told Chloe. "Richard, I'm here for you. You're not her. You'll never be her." Chloe's mask slipped, showing the rage beneath. "She left you. I'm here." "I know, and that's the problem. You're here because you want what I built. She left because she wanted what I destroyed. Her. I destroyed her." Chloe left the hospital room, her careful plans unraveling, the prize she'd fought for turning to ash in her hands. And somewhere in Oregon, 2,000 miles away, Anna Marlowe felt her baby kick against her ribs and smiled, unaware of the destruction she'd left in her wake, focused only on the life she was building. One breath, one choice, one brave step at a time. 3 weeks after Isabella vanished from Manhattan, a pregnant woman stepped off a Greyhound bus in Portland, Oregon. She was exhausted, 8 months pregnant, and running desperately low on cash. The bus ride had been a nightmare of cramped seats and truck stop bathrooms, but she'd made it. Anna Marlowe had made it. She took a local bus north to Astoria, a small coastal town clinging to the hillside where the Columbia River met the Pacific Ocean. The town smelled of salt and rain and wood smoke. Victorian houses painted in faded pastels climbed the steep streets. Fishing boats bobbed in the harbor. Everything was smaller here, quieter, more real than the gleaming towers of Manhattan. Anna tried 3 motels before accepting the truth. They all wanted credit cards. Cash wasn't enough, not without identification that matched her new name, not without a paper trail she couldn't provide. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the last clerk said, genuinely apologetic. "It's policy." Anna sat on a bench in the town square, hand on her swollen belly, fighting panic. She'd planned so carefully, but she hadn't planned for this. The baby kicked, as if asking what came next, and Anna didn't have an answer. That first night, she slept in the car she'd bought for $800 from a sketchy dealer in Portland. The back seat was cramped, her body too pregnant to get comfortable. Morning sickness combined with sleeping in a car made for a nightmare. She cried quietly, apologizing to her unborn son. "I'm sorry, baby, I'm so sorry. We'll figure this out, I promise." On the third morning, desperate and exhausted, Anna noticed a bookstore on the main street. Sullivan and Daughters Books in hand-painted letters. The window display showed worn paperbacks and a handwritten sign, "Public restroom inside." Anna went in just to wash her face, to use a real bathroom, to feel human for 5 minutes. The store was cramped and cozy, smelling of old paper and coffee. An older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes watched from behind the counter. "You okay, honey?" the woman asked. "Just traveling. Is there a bathroom?" "In back. Take your time." In the bathroom, Anna looked at her reflection for the first time in days. Hair unwashed, dark circles under her eyes, but something else too. She looked real. Not polished or perfect, just real, raw, human. When she emerged, the woman had tea waiting. "You looked like you needed this, on the house." The kindness broke something in Anna. Tears came before she could stop them. "Thank you. How long you been sleeping in that car out front?" Anna's head snapped up. How did you?" The woman smiled gently. "Honey, I was a family lawyer for 30 years before I retired. I know a woman on the run when I see one. I'm Margaret Sullivan." Anna Marlowe. "Is that your real name, Anna Marlowe?" Anna said nothing. Margaret nodded. "Fair enough. You have a place to stay?" "Not yet. I'm looking. I have a room above the store. Small, but clean. You can stay there if you work in the shop." "That cover rent?" Anna stared at this woman offering salvation to a stranger. "Why are you helping me?" "Because 40 years ago, I was sleeping in my car too, and someone helped me. Now I'm passing it on." Margaret's eyes were kind but firm. "You running from something illegal?" "No, I'm running from someone who treated me like property instead of a person." "Good enough for me. Welcome to Astoria, Anna." The room above the bookstore was tiny, just a bed and a dresser and a window overlooking the street. But it was hers. The first space that had been truly hers in 6 years. Anna cried herself to sleep that night, but they were different tears. Relief, hope, gratitude. The next few weeks established a rhythm. Anna worked downstairs, shelving books, helping customers, learning the ebb and flow of small-town life. People were curious but respectful. They noticed her accent, her obvious pregnancy, the way she tensed when anyone asked personal questions. But they gave her space. "Small towns are interesting," Margaret explained one afternoon. "We're all in each other's business, but we also know when to mind our own. You're clearly running from something, but you're also clearly not a threat. That's enough for most folks." At night, Anna had nightmares. Richard finding her, taking the baby, dragging her back to Manhattan. She'd wake gasping, hand on her belly, checking that her son was still there. Still safe, still hers. Margaret heard her one night and came upstairs with chamomile tea. The nightmares will fade, she said quietly. I had them too. Takes time to believe you're really safe. What if he finds me? Honey, you're a pregnant woman who disappeared into America. That's like finding a specific grain of sand on a beach. You're safe. In her second month in Astoria, Anna met Grace Thompson at the prenatal clinic. Grace was 5 months pregnant, southern accent thick as honey, and refreshingly direct. First baby? Grace asked, settling into the chair next to Anna in the waiting room. Yes, you? Third, but first one solo. Baby daddy left when he found out. Trash took itself out, as my mama would say. Anna laughed, a real laugh, the first in months. Also solo. Grace studied her with knowing eyes. Running from someone? Is it that obvious? Honey, I'm from Georgia. I know women on the run. That coat's designer, even if you're trying to hide it. Your accent screams East Coast money, and you haven't told anyone your last name. Grace smiled. Relax, I'm not asking for details. We've all got our stories. They went for coffee after their appointments, talking for hours about pregnancy fears and single motherhood and building lives from scratch. It was the first real conversation Anna had had in years, the first time she'd felt seen as a person rather than an accessory. You're good people, Anna, whoever you are, Grace said as they parted. Stick around. I plan to. In her third month in Astoria, at 9 months pregnant, Anna met James Morrison. The bookstore's sink broke, flooding the back room, and Margaret called the local carpenter. James arrived in a flannel shirt and work boots, with kind eyes and a calm presence that immediately put Anna at ease. He fixed the sink efficiently, then noticed Anna struggling with heavy boxes of new inventory. You shouldn't be lifting those. Let me. Anna's instinct was to refuse, to prove her independence, but something about James made her feel safe. Thank you. As he worked, James made easy conversation. He'd lived in Astoria his whole life. His wife had died 2 years ago, leaving him to raise their daughter Lily alone. He built furniture, fixed things, knew everyone in town. I'm making a crib for Grace's baby, he mentioned. Want me to build one for yours too? No charge. Every baby deserves a handmade welcome. Anna's eyes filled with tears, hormones, and kindness overwhelming her. Why would you do that? James smiled. Because we take care of each other here. That's how small towns work. 2 weeks later, on a night when a massive storm battered the coast, Anna's water broke. It was 2 in the morning, contractions coming fast, and she was alone in her tiny room above the bookstore. She called Grace, her emergency contact. It's time. I'm coming. Hold on. But the storm had flooded the roads. The ambulance couldn't get through. Grace arrived soaked and determined. Okay, honey, breathe. We got this. Margaret heard the commotion and came upstairs. I delivered my daughter at home in 1976. I remember enough. Then James appeared with a medical kit. My wife, before she died, we took a home birth class. Just in case. I can help. So Anna Marlowe gave birth in a tiny room above a bookstore during a coastal storm with 3 near strangers who became family in the space of 4 hours. Grace coached her breathing. Margaret sterilized towels. James stayed calm and focused, guiding her through each contraction. At 3:47 in the morning, with rain battering the windows and wind howling off the ocean, Leo Marlowe was born. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Healthy, perfect, free. Anna held him, sobbing with joy and relief and overwhelming love. Hi, baby. Hi, you're safe. You're so safe. Grace was crying too. He's beautiful, Anna. James brought the handmade cradle he'd finished that week. Welcome to the world, little man. Margaret touched Anna's shoulder gently. What's his name? Leo. It means lion, because he's brave. Anna looked at each of them in turn. Braver than I've ever been. You gave birth during a storm with no hospital and no drugs, Margaret said. You're plenty brave. The next 6 months were the happiest of Anna's life. She worked at the bookstore with Leo and in a carrier on her chest. The town embraced them, this mysterious woman and her baby, asking no questions but offering endless help. Casseroles appeared on Margaret's doorstep. Hand-me-down baby clothes. Offers to babysit. Grace's daughter Ruby was born 6 months after Leo. The two women raised their children together, forming a friendship deeper than any Anna had known in Manhattan. They went to the farmer's market on Saturdays, spent evenings on the beach watching their babies play in the sand, built a life from community and courage. James was around more and more, fixing things that didn't need fixing, bringing dinner, reading to Leo. One evening on the beach, watching the sunset while Leo slept in his stroller, James turned to Anna. I don't know what you're running from, but you're safe here. They were sitting close, shoulders almost touching. He leaned in slightly, and Anna felt the pull, the temptation. But she pulled back. James, I'm not ready. I'm still legally. It's complicated. I'll wait, he said simply, however long it takes. Why are you so patient with me? Because you're worth waiting for. On Leo's first birthday, the whole town seemed to show up for the beach party. Ruby took her first steps toward Leo. Margaret brought a cake shaped like a lion. Doc Harris gave Leo a toy stethoscope. The town librarian read stories. Fishermen's families brought fresh crab. James taught Leo to skip stones, even though at 1-year-old, Leo mostly just threw rocks in the water and laughed. Anna watched them together, her heart full in a way it had never been in the penthouse. That night, putting Leo to bed, she sang him the lullaby her mother had sung to her. Hush, little baby, don't you cry. Mom, Leo said clearly, his first word. Anna held him close, crying happy tears. Yes, baby, Mama's here. Always. She thought she'd found it. Peace, home, safety. She thought the past was gone forever, buried under 2,000 miles in a new name and a life built from authenticity instead of appearances. But 1,800 miles away, in a stark office in Manhattan, Frank Harrison was reviewing birth certificates filed in Oregon. And one certificate had caught his attention. Baby Leo Marlowe, born Astoria, mother Anna Marlowe. The mother's date of birth matched Isabella Sterling's exactly. Harrison picked up the phone. Mr. Sterling, I found her. Anna's perfect life was about to shatter. Because the past, it turns out, doesn't stay buried. It just waits. 18 months after Isabella disappeared, Richard Sterling sat in his therapist's office in Manhattan, working through the wreckage of his breakdown. He'd been sober for 16 months. He'd stepped back from daily operations at Sterling Enterprises. He'd been doing what his therapist called the work, trying to understand how he'd become a man his wife felt she had to flee. The sessions were brutal. Week after week of confronting his failures, his arrogance, his casual cruelty dressed up as ambition. He'd filled journals with letters to Isabella he'd never send, apologies that felt inadequate, questions that had no answers. I thought giving her everything meant I was a good husband, Richard told his therapist, but I never gave her what she actually wanted. I never asked what that was. And what do you think she wanted? To be seen, to matter, to be a partner instead of a possession. Richard's voice cracked. I collected her like I collect art. And now she's gone and I'm left with this empty penthouse and the knowledge that I destroyed the one real thing I ever had. His phone rang during that session, Harrison's name on the screen. Richard answered, his heart hammering. Yes? Astoria, Oregon, small coastal town. She has the baby, healthy boy, 18 months old, named Leo. Richard's world stopped. You're sure? Birth certificate, date burial of our birth matches. It's her. What do you want to do? Richard's therapist was shaking her head frantically, mouthing, No, not yet. You're not ready. But Richard wasn't listening. That was his son somewhere in Oregon. A toddler now, walking and talking and living a life Richard knew nothing about. Send me everything, address, photos, all of it. Richard, his therapist said urgently, remember what we talked about. You're not ready for this. You need more time. But Richard had already hung up, was already pulling up flights to Portland on his phone. 18 months of therapy, of growth, of trying to become someone better, all collapsing in the face of this news. That's my son. I've missed 18 months of his life. I'm ready. He wasn't ready. 2 days later, Richard sat in a rental car outside Sullivan and Daughter's Books in Astoria. Harrison had sent him photos, surveillance, details. Isabella worked there. She called herself Anna Marlowe now. She had friends, a life, a routine, and she had a man. Richard watched as Anna came out of the bookstore, pushing a stroller, laughing at something a tall man in a flannel shirt had said. The man was rugged, kind-faced, clearly comfortable with her in a way that made Richard's blood boil. Then he heard it. The toddler in the stroller, dark curly hair, Richard's chin, pointing at the man and saying clearly, "Dada." Richard's world shattered. He called another man Dada. My son called another man Dada. They walked to a nearby park. Richard followed at a distance, watching this man push his son on a swing, watching Anna smile in a way she'd never smiled at him, genuine and free and happy. They looked like a real family, the kind Richard had never managed to build. That night, drinking in his motel room despite 18 months of sobriety, Richard made a decision. He called his lawyer. "I need custody papers filed, full custody, immediately." "Richard, we discussed this. Parental kidnapping is very difficult to prove when the mother left while still pregnant. She had legal right to—" "I don't care. She used a fake identity. She kept my son from me. I have resources, lawyers, money. She has a bookstore job. I want my son." The lawyer sighed. "I'll prepare the papers. But Richard, I have to warn you, this could backfire badly. Courts favor mothers, especially in cases where just do it." The next morning, Richard walked into the bookstore. Margaret Sullivan looked up from the counter, her eyes immediately wary. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Anna Marlowe." Something in his tone made Margaret's expression harden. "Who's asking?" "Someone she knows." Anna came down the stairs from her apartment, Leo on her hip, laughing at something Margaret had said. Then she saw Richard. The world stopped. The color drained from her face. Her grip on Leo tightened protectively. "Mama?" "Who dat?" Leo asked, sensing her tension. "Margaret, take Leo upstairs. Now." Margaret moved quickly, recognizing danger. "Come on, sweetie. Let's get cookies." Leo protested, "Mama?" But Margaret was already carrying him up the stairs, leaving Anna and Richard alone in the bookstore. The silence was deafening. 6 years of marriage, 18 months of separation, and neither knew where to start. Richard spoke first. "Hello, Isabella." "Don't call me that." "That's your name." "Not anymore." "What are you doing here?" "I came to meet my son, the son you stole from me." Anna's eyes flashed with rage. "I didn't steal him. I saved him." "From what? A father who loved him?" Anna laughed, bitter and sharp. "You didn't love him. You loved the idea of an heir. Did you even know I was pregnant with the boy? Did you know his due date? Did you care?" "That's not fair." "Fair? Fair?" Anna's voice rose. "You missed every appointment, every ultrasound. You were with her while I was alone, carrying your child. Don't you dare talk to me about fair." Richard pulled an envelope from his jacket. "These are custody papers. I'm suing for full custody." The floor seemed to drop beneath Anna. "You can't." "I can and I will. You committed fraud, identity theft, parental interference. I have lawyers, money, resources. You have a bookstore job and a fake name." Anna's hands shook. "I have him. I have Leo, and he doesn't know you. He doesn't need you." He called that man Dada. My son called another man Dada. Because James has been here. James feeds him breakfast. James reads him bedtime stories. James is his father in every way that matters. Richard's face was cold, cruel. "Not legally. Legally, I'm his father, and I'm taking him back to New York. Over my dead body. See you in court, Isabella." He walked out, leaving Anna standing alone, her whole world crumbling. She made it to the stairs before her legs gave out, collapsing on the bottom step, sobbing. Margaret rushed down, holding Leo. "What happened?" "He found us. He's taking Leo. He's going to take my baby." The custody papers arrived a week later. Full physical custody to Richard Sterling. Child relocation to New York. Isabella to have supervised visitation only. Charges included parental interference, fraud, and custodial kidnapping. The local newspaper ran the story. NYC Billionaire files for custody of Oregon toddler. The town turned on Anna overnight. She'd lied about who she was. She'd used a fake name. Parents pulled their kids from Leo's playgroup. The bookstore got angry calls. Margaret's bottom asked Anna to leave. Margaret quit on the spot. "Then I quit. We're a package deal." Grace and James stood by her, but the rest of Astoria whispered and judged. Anna packed her bags, ready to run again. "Where will you go?" Grace asked. "I don't know, away. Somewhere he can't find us." James took her hands. "He found you once. He'll find you again. You can't keep running." "Then what do I do?" "You fight," James said firmly. "You stand your ground, and you fight for your son." Margaret appeared in the doorway. "I'm coming out of retirement." Anna looked up, confused. "What?" "I was a family lawyer for 30 years, won over 200 custody cases. I'm representing you." "I can't afford pro bono. Now, stop packing and let's build your case." Over the next 3 weeks, Margaret prepared for war. She gathered evidence, interviewed witnesses, built a timeline of Richard's neglect. Doc Harris provided prenatal records showing Anna had never missed an appointment. Grace and James agreed to testify. The town slowly came around as the story emerged, realizing Anna hadn't been running from nothing. The trial was set for Oregon Family Court. Richard arrived with a team of 5 lawyers in expensive suits. Anna's side consisted of Margaret and a borrowed legal pad. Richard's opening statement was powerful. "Your Honor, Richard Sterling is a loving father denied the chance to meet his son by his wife's premeditated abandonment. She fabricated a false identity, fled across the country while pregnant, and has spent 18 months denying Mr. Sterling his parental rights. We're asking the court to remedy this injustice." Witnesses testified to Richard's transformation. His therapist described his growth. Robert from the board spoke about Richard's commitment to change. A child psychologist talked about the resources and opportunities Richard could provide. The evidence against Anna was damning. Her secret bank account, the fake ID, the birth certificate with no father listed, photos of her looking happy with James suggesting she'd moved on immediately and never looked back. By the end of day 2, Anna whispered to Margaret, "We're going to lose him." Margaret squeezed her hand. "It's day 2. Trust me." On day 3, Margaret called her witnesses. Grace, James, Doc Harris, all painting a picture of Anna as a devoted mother who'd created a stable, loving home. But Richard's lawyers objected constantly, dismissing character testimony as irrelevant to the legal issues of fraud and kidnapping. Then Anna took the stand. "Ms. Marlowe," Margaret said gently, "why did you leave?" Anna looked directly at Richard as she answered, "Because I was dying. Not physically, but spiritually. I was disappearing." She detailed the slow erosion of their marriage, the missed appointments, the affair, the casual cruelty of a man who'd stopped seeing her as human. Margaret presented Richard's calendar showing 12 missed prenatal appointments, phone records showing 3 calls in 7 months, hotel receipts, Isabella's preserved journal entries. "I didn't leave to punish him," Anna said, her voice strong. "I left to save myself and our son from a life of emotional neglect." Richard's lawyer cross-examined ruthlessly. The fraud, the fake identity, the deliberate cutting of parental ties, but Anna held firm. "I used my maiden name and paid for everything legally. That's not fraud. I invited him to every appointment. He chose not to come, and James stepped up because someone needed to. Leo calls him Dada because James is there. Every single day. That's fatherhood." On day 5, Margaret called a surprise witness. Sarah Sterling and Martinez walked into the courtroom, and Richard's face went white. "Ms. Martinez, what's your relationship to Richard Sterling?" "He's my brother. We haven't spoken in 3 years." Sarah testified about the family pattern, their mother dying alone while Richard closed a deal, missing family events for business, the emotional absence that defined the Sterling family legacy. When Richard called to tell me about Leo, he said, "I'm going to have an heir. Not, I'm going to be a father." That tells you everything you need to know. Richard stared at his sister, betrayed. Sarah wouldn't meet his eyes. Then Richard stood. "Your Honor, I need to say something." His lawyer tried to stop him. "Richard, don't." But Richard was done with lawyers, done with strategy, done with fighting. "My sister is right about all of it." He looked at Anna, really looked at her for the first time in years. "I didn't lose my wife. I suffocated her. I didn't lose my son. I never deserved him." His voice broke. "You were right to run. I would have destroyed him like I destroyed you." The courtroom was silent. In the gallery, Chloe Winters watched in horror. She'd come to watch Anna suffer, to see Richard reclaim his power. Instead, she was watching him surrender, watching him admit he had been wrong about everything. I came here to take Leo back to New York, but that's not what he needs. Richard turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'm withdrawing my petition. I don't want to take Leo from his mother. I want to earn the right to be his father. If she'll let me. He looked at Anna. If not, I understand. The judge retired for recess. When he returned, his ruling was careful, measured. Joint legal custody, primary physical custody to Anna Marlowe. Richard Sterling receives graduated visitation, starting with supervised visits, building to overnight weekends after 1 year of family therapy and parenting classes. Child support to be placed in trust for Leo's future. He looked at Richard. Mr. Sterling, Leo doesn't know you. Fatherhood is earned through presence, not pronouncement. You have the opportunity to earn it. Don't waste it. Anna cried with relief. Richard accepted the verdict with quiet gratitude. The mistress who'd come to watch Anna's defeat slipped out of the courtroom. Her own defeat complete. The battle was over. But the healing was just beginning. The community center's playroom smelled of crayons and graham crackers. Grace sat on a folding chair in the corner, her phone out, officially supervising Richard Sterling's first visit with his son. Anna stood near the door, unable to leave, unable to watch, unable to breathe properly. Richard arrived exactly on time, carrying bags from an expensive toy store. A giant teddy bear bigger than Leo, a miniature Mercedes, designer toddler clothes with tags still attached. Leo, now 2 years old, took one look at this stranger and hid behind Anna's legs. No, Leo said clearly. Don't know him. Anna knelt down, eye level with her son. Leo, this is Richard. He's your... She struggled with the words. He's your biological father. I have Dada James. Richard's face crumpled. All his money, all his preparation, and his son rejected him with 4 simple words. Grace stood. Mr. Sterling, put the toys away. Just sit on the floor. Richard looked down. What do I do? Be present. That's it. Richard sat cross-legged on the playroom floor, surrounded by blocks and trucks, feeling ridiculous in his suit. Leo ignored him, playing with a cardboard box, making it into a spaceship with the easy imagination of a toddler. That's a nice spaceship, Richard offered. Leo eyed him suspiciously. My spaceship. Can I help you build it? Leo considered this. Okay. They spent the next hour building a cardboard spaceship. Richard made rocket sounds, surprising in himself with how natural it felt. Leo laughed, the sound piercing Richard's heart, and for the first time in 18 months, Richard felt something other than grief. When the visit ended, Leo waved goodbye. Just a small wave, nothing dramatic, but it was acknowledgement. Progress. He laughed, Richard said to Grace, his eyes wet. He actually laughed. Grace nodded. Because you showed up. Keep showing up. Over the next 3 months, Richard showed up. Every Tuesday and Thursday, 4 hours each, supervised by Grace or Margaret or James. He learned to read picture books with enthusiasm, to build block towers meant to be knocked down, to appreciate that Leo preferred cardboard boxes to expensive toys. He moved from Manhattan to Portland, buying a modest house instead of a penthouse. 3 bedrooms, a backyard, walls he slowly filled with Leo's artwork. He worked from home, stepping back from Sterling Enterprises completely, discovering he didn't miss it. He attended family therapy sessions, learning to communicate without controlling, took parenting classes where he was the oldest student by 15 years and the only billionaire. Why are you even here? A young single mother asked him during break. You can afford nannies, night nurses, the best care. Because I want to do it right this time. Because money can't buy presents. By month 6, Richard had earned unsupervised day visits. He'd pick Leo up from Anna's apartment, now a small house she rented with her law firm income, and they'd go to the park or the aquarium or sometimes just make pancakes together. Your pancakes are getting better, Daddy Richard, Leo said one morning. Daddy Richard. Not just Richard, not yet Daddy, but Daddy Richard, a title earned. Richard cried in his car afterward, calling his therapist. He called me Daddy Richard. How does that feel? Like I've been given something I don't deserve, but I'm going to spend every day earning anyway. Anna watched from a distance as Richard transformed. It would have been easier to hate him, to keep the anger burning, but she saw him trying, really trying, coming to Leo's soccer games and sitting with James, the two men who loved her son, forming an unlikely friendship. He's different, James observed one afternoon, watching Richard teach Leo to skip stones on the beach. People can change, Anna said, if they want to badly enough. Does it change what he did? No, but maybe it changes what comes next. James turned to her. Anna, we've been dancing around this for 3 years. I love you. I love Leo. I want to marry you, build a life with you. But I need to know if you're ready. Anna looked at this man who'd shown up in a storm with a medical kit, who'd built her son a cradle, who'd been present every single day without asking for anything in return. Yes, she said, I'm ready. 3 years after the trial, Anna and James were married on the beach in Astoria. Leo was the ring bearer, taking his job very seriously. Grace and Margaret stood as witnesses. And Richard, in a folding chair next to his girlfriend Jennifer, a kind preschool teacher he'd met at Leo's school, watched with genuine happiness. At the reception, a small gathering of family and friends, Richard approached Anna. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not giving up on me. For letting me earn this. Anna smiled. You did the work. You showed up. That's all I ever wanted. Leo ran over, tugging on both Richard and James. Daddies, come see! Two daddies, both earned, both loved, both showing up. Anna thought about the woman she'd been, sleeping in a car, terrified and alone. She thought about the night she'd given birth in a storm, surrounded by strangers who became family. She thought about the long road from Isabella Sterling to Anna Marlowe, from possession to person, from gilded cage to genuine freedom. She'd found what she'd been seeking all along. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And real, she'd learned, was worth everything. 3 years after the trial, Chloe Winters stood outside Anna's law office above Sullivan and Daughter's books, trying to summon courage she didn't have anymore. She wore Target clothes instead of designer labels. Her hair, once highlighted monthly at an exclusive salon, was her natural dishwater blonde with gray starting to show. Her manicure was gone, nails bitten short from stress. Everything she'd fought for had turned to ash. After Richard fired her and terminated her firm's contract with Sterling Enterprises, word spread fast in Manhattan's insular architecture community. The woman who'd manipulated a billionaire, who'd leaked confidential information, who'd played games with other people's marriages, blacklisted. She tried to sue Richard for wrongful termination. Her lawyer had laughed. On what grounds? He fired you for cause, and you know it. You have no case. Her savings evaporated in legal fees. She lost her Chelsea apartment, had to give up her car, moved back to Pennsylvania to live with her aging parents in the trailer park she'd spent 20 years trying to escape. She got a job at the mall, selling makeup to teenagers who looked at her with pity. The woman who'd almost been Mrs. Richard Sterling, reduced to commission sales and discount polyester. But today she'd seen Anna's face in the newspaper. Local attorney wins landmark domestic violence case. Anna looked confident, professional, successful. Everything Chloe had wanted and lost. Anna exited the building with Leo, now 5 years old, chattering about his kindergarten day. She stopped when she saw Chloe. Leo, go inside with Grace, honey. Mama will be right there. Leo ran inside and Anna turned to face the woman who tried to destroy her marriage. Anna, please, 5 minutes. Anna's expression was unreadable. You have two. Chloe's story poured out. The blacklisting, the poverty, the spectacular fall from grace. I lost everything. And you want me to feel sorry for you? No, I want you to understand. We wanted the same thing. Anna's laugh was cold. We wanted nothing alike. We both wanted to matter, Chloe insisted, to be more than where we came from. You chose the hard way, the honest way. I chose wrong. You chose to destroy another woman to get what you wanted. That's not ambition. That's cruelty. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. I know. I know that now, and I'm sorry for all of it. The silence stretched between them. Anna remembered the earring left on her nightstand, the leaked stories to the press, the calculated campaign to erase her so Chloe could take her place. Why are you here, Chloe? I saw your picture. You're thriving. You have everything I wanted, And you got it by being honest. I just wanted you to know I understand now. What you did took more courage than anything I've ever done. Anna studied this broken woman, seeing not an enemy, but a cautionary tale. There's a women's shelter 2 blocks from here. They're building a new wing. They need an architect. Pro bono. Chloe stared. What? It's volunteer work, no pay. But if you do good work, I'll give you a reference. Why would you help me? Because someone helped me when I had nothing. And because you're young enough to become someone different, if you want to. Chloe's tears fell freely now. I don't deserve this. No, Anna agreed. You don't. But do it anyway, not for me. For the next woman who might be where I was. Help her instead of trying to destroy her. Anna walked away, leaving Chloe holding a business card for Haven House Women's Shelter. 2 weeks later, Chloe stood at a construction site with blueprints she'd drawn by hand, unable to afford design software. The shelter director reviewed them carefully. Ms. Winters, these are beautiful, functional, welcoming, exactly what we need. Thank you. I want this to be a place where women feel safe, where they can start over. Anna Marlowe recommended you. She said you were worth taking a chance on. Chloe's throat tightened. She was more generous than I deserved. Then earn it. Chloe looked at the blueprints, at the plans for Haven House, a place to begin again. Okay, I'll earn it. At the beach bonfire that evening, the extended family gathered. Grace and her partner with Ruby, Margaret knitting in a folding chair, James teaching Lily and Leo to roast marshmallows, Richard and Jennifer playing frisbee with the kids. Anna sat watching them all, her found family, her chosen tribe. Grace settled beside her. You good? Yeah, I really am. 3 years ago, you were sleeping in your car. I remember. Feels like a different lifetime. That's because you're a completely different person. Anna shook her head. No, I'm the same person I always was. I just found her again. Richard approached, Leo running ahead to show Anna a seashell. After Leo ran back to James, Richard stayed. He's a great kid, Richard said. He is. You did that. You raised him to be kind, curious, open. We're all doing it, all of us. Can I ask you something? Richard waited for her nod. Do you ever regret it? Leaving? Anna looked at Leo laughing with James, at Grace with Ruby, at Margaret and Doc Harris discussing books, at this life she'd built from courage and community. Not for 1 second. I regret that it had to happen that way, but I don't regret the decision. I do. I regret everything I did that made you feel you had to. I know, but you're different now, and that matters. Leo called out, Mama, Daddy Richard, come see. They walked over together to their blended, complicated, beautiful family. 2 daddies for Leo, both earned through presence. A mother who'd saved herself and her son. A village that had chosen to become family. The sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Anna felt at peace in a way she'd never experienced in the penthouse with its views of Central Park. This was real. Messy and imperfect and absolutely real. Margaret caught her eye from across the bonfire and raised her mug in a silent toast. To women who save themselves. To communities that catch them. To second chances earned through honesty and work. Anna raised her own mug in return. To courage. To choosing truth over comfort. To walking away when walking away is the only way to find yourself. The bonfire crackled. The waves rolled in. Leo's laughter echoed in the gathering dark. And Anna Marlowe, formerly Isabella Sterling, finally knew she was home. The next morning, Anna sat at her desk in her law office reviewing case files. The morning sun slanted through windows overlooking the street. The same street where she'd once slept in her car, desperate and afraid. She'd come so far. Her calendar was full. 3 custody consultations, 2 restraining order filings, 1 woman who needed help leaving an abusive marriage. This was the work she'd always been meant to do, the woman she'd always been meant to be. The door opened. A woman stepped in, maybe 30, with a bruised eye barely hidden by makeup and a toddler on her hip. Anna recognized that look. The fear mixed with determination, the way she held her child protectively, the exhaustion that came from living in survival mode. Can I help you? Anna asked gently. The woman's voice was barely above a whisper. I need to disappear. I need to leave. But I don't know how. Anna stood, walked to the shelf behind her desk, and pulled down a framed piece of paper. Her own note from 5 years ago, the one she'd left on Richard's kitchen island. I am gone. Please do not look for me. She showed it to the woman. This was mine, 5 years ago. It worked. The woman stared at the note, then at the office around her, at the life Anna had built. You really did it? Anna gestured to everything, her law degree on the wall, photos of Leo on her desk, the life she'd claimed through courage. I'm here, aren't I? Can you help me? That's exactly why I'm here. Anna pulled out a legal pad, the same kind she'd used to plan her own escape. Let's start with your name. Jessica Martinez. Anna began writing, years of experience and personal history combining into a roadmap for escape. Okay, Jessica, let's build your exit strategy. For the next 2 hours, Anna walked Jessica through every step. Bank accounts in her maiden name, cash withdrawals that wouldn't trigger alerts, post office boxes, documents needed for identification, small coastal towns with tight-knit communities, support systems and resources. The first night is the hardest, Anna said. You'll second-guess everything. But remember, you're not running away. You're running towards safety, toward yourself. Jessica clutched her daughter tighter. What if he finds me? Then you'll have people who protect you. That's how this works. You save yourself, but you don't do it alone. Anna handed her a folder. This has everything you need. Numbers for domestic violence, hotlines, shelters in 5 different states, legal resources, and my direct number. You can call me anytime, day or night. How much do I owe you? Nothing. Someone helped me for free. Now I'm passing it on. After Jessica left, Anna sat at her desk for a long moment processing. 5 years ago, she'd been the one walking through a door, desperate for help. Now she was the one offering it. The circle was complete. Margaret appeared in the doorway with tea. Another one? Yes, she reminds me of myself, scared but determined. You're doing good work, Anna. I'm doing the work I was always meant to do. That evening, Anna attended Leo's soccer game. The stands were full of their chosen family. James and Lily, Grace and her partner with Ruby, Margaret with her eternal knitting, and Richard with Jennifer, both cheering as Leo ran the wrong direction and accidentally scored on his own team. Everyone laughed, including Leo, who thought it was hilarious. Anna felt her heart expand, watching her son live a childhood so different from the one Richard would have given him in Manhattan. Here, Leo was allowed to be imperfect, to make mistakes, to just be a kid. After the game, they all went for ice cream. Leo sat between his 2 daddies, trying to negotiate a sundae instead of a single scoop. Daddy James, can we get sundaes? James laughed. Ask your mom. Mama says 1 scoop, Anna said firmly. Leo turned to Richard with hope. Daddy Richard, can you say yes? Richard glanced at Anna, and they shared a look of parental solidarity. Nice try, buddy, 1 scoop. Leo sighed dramatically. Worth a treat. Later, as they walked back to the cars, Richard fell into step beside Anna. Thank you, he said quietly. You thank me every time I see you. You can stop. I'm not thanking you for forgiving me. I'm thanking you for showing me what love actually looks like. Anna paused. What do you mean? This. Richard gestured to the scene around them. Leo and Lily racing ahead with ice cream, James and Jennifer chatting easily, Grace and Margaret arguing good-naturedly about a book. You built this. A family that chose each other, that shows up for each other. I grew up with money and obligation. You showed me what real wealth is. It took me a long time to figure it out too. But you did. And you didn't just save yourself and Leo, you saved me. By leaving, you forced me to see what I'd become. I don't know if I ever really thanked you for that. You've thanked me by becoming someone Leo can be proud to know. That's enough. That night, putting Leo to bed in their small house with its creaky floors and handmade furniture, Anna felt the kind of peace money can't buy. Leo was clean and fed and loved. The bills were paid. Tomorrow she'd help another woman find her courage. James would fix a neighbor's fence. They'd have dinner with friends. It was simple and real in everything. Mama, Leo said sleepily, tell me the story again. Which story, baby? About when you were brave. Anna smiled, running her fingers through his dark curls. Once upon a time, there was a woman who felt very small. She lived in a big, beautiful castle, but she was lonely. Then she found out she was going to have a baby, and she knew she had to be brave. So one morning before the sun came up, she left the castle and went on a big adventure to find a place where they could both be free. And she found Astoria, Leo finished, knowing the story by heart. She found Astoria, and Aunt Margaret, and Aunt Grace, and Daddy James. And later, Daddy Richard found them too, and learned to be brave in his own way. I'm glad you were brave, Mama. Me too, baby, me too. After Leo fell asleep, Anna stood at the window, looking out at the small street, the modest houses, the quiet town that had saved her life. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. I did it. I left. I'm scared, but I'm free. Thank you. Anna replied, You're going to be okay. And when you're ready, you'll help the next woman. That's how we survive. That's how we win. She thought about the woman she'd been 5 years ago. Isabella Sterling, trophy wife, living in a gilded cage, slowly disappearing. She'd believed leaving was an act of cowardice, of failure. Now she understood it had been the bravest thing she'd ever done. Walking away isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the only way to find yourself. Anna had walked away from wealth and security and the life everyone thought she should want. And in doing so, she'd found everything she actually needed. Purpose, community, love that wasn't conditional. A life built on her own terms, in her own name. The past couldn't be changed. Richard would always be the man who'd failed to see her. But the future was hers to write. And she was writing it one day at a time, one case at a time, one woman at a time, teaching them what she'd learned in the darkest hours of that bus ride across America. You are stronger than you know. You deserve to be seen, to be valued, to take up space in your own life. And if you have to disappear to find yourself, then disappear. Run toward freedom. Run toward yourself. And on the other side, there will be people waiting. A bookstore owner with a room to spare. A friend who sees you. A man who shows up with a medical kit in a storm. A community that asks no questions but offers everything. You don't have to be Mrs. Sterling to matter. You just have to be yourself. Anna Marlowe, formerly Isabella Sterling, turned away from the window and went to bed. Tomorrow she'd save the world, one woman at a time. Tonight she'd sleep peacefully in a house that was hers, in a life she'd claimed, with a son who was free. The pregnant wife had vanished. But the woman she'd become, she was just getting started. 5 years to the day after Isabella Sterling disappeared from Manhattan, Anna Marlowe sat on the beach in Astoria, watching Leo build a sandcastle with Ruby. The morning fog was burning off, revealing the kind of Pacific Northwest day that made people fall in love with the coast. Margaret settled beside her, still spry at 73, knitting needles never idle. Thinking deep thoughts? Thinking about anniversaries. 5 years today. Any regrets? Anna watched Leo laugh as a wave destroyed his castle. He immediately started rebuilding, resilient and joyful. Not a single one. Good, because that woman you helped last week, Jessica, she called me yesterday. She made it to Montana. She's safe. She wanted me to tell you thank you. Anna smiled. Tell her to call me in a year and tell me she's thriving. That's the real thank you. Over the past 5 years, Anna had helped 43 women disappear. 43 women who'd walked into her office desperate and walked out with a plan, with hope, with the knowledge that someone understood. She kept a private journal with just their first names and the dates they'd left. A record of courage, of survival, of the Underground Railroad for women escaping. Some came back to thank her. Some she never heard from again, which was fine, which was the point. They'd become someone new, somewhere new, just like she had. The law practice had grown. She'd hired 2 associates, both women with their own escape stories. Grace managed the office, her organizational skills perfect for keeping 47 cases straight. They specialized in family law, custody battles, domestic violence cases, and what they privately called strategic relocations. Richard called it Anna's mission. She called it paying forward. James walked up the beach from his workshop, now a successful custom furniture business. Lily trailed behind, 11 years old and already taller than Anna. They'd been married for 2 years, a small ceremony on this same beach with Leo as ring bearer, and half the town in attendance. "Lunch is ready," James said, dropping a kiss on Anna's head. "Your mom called. She's coming to visit next month." Eleanor, now 63 and retired from nursing, visited twice a year. She and Margaret had become unlikely friends, two women who'd saved themselves in different eras, bonded by survival. "Did she say how long?" "2 weeks. She wants to be here for Leo's birthday." Leo, hearing this, ran over soaking wet. "Grandma's coming? Can she tell me more stories about when Mama was little?" Anna laughed. "I'm sure she'll tell you every embarrassing story she can remember." They walked back to the house, this odd little family they'd built. Not traditional, not what anyone would have predicted, but theirs. Real and messy and full of love. That afternoon, Richard arrived for his weekend with Leo. He'd fully transitioned to Portland now, selling his Manhattan properties entirely. Jennifer was pregnant, due in 3 months. They'd asked Anna and James to be godparents, a request that had moved Anna to tears. "Ready, buddy?" Richard asked Leo. "Can Ruby come? Daddy Richard, please?" Richard glanced at Grace, who nodded permission. "Sure, text me when you want her picked up." "Thank you," Leo said solemnly, practicing his manners. Anna watched them drive away, her son secure in the knowledge that he was loved by multiple adults, that family wasn't limited to biology, that he was safe. "You okay?" James asked, his arm around her waist. Anna, yeah, just thinking about how different life is now. Different good or different bad. Different miraculous. That evening, Anna gave a talk at the women's shelter Chloe had designed, and Haven House had been open for a year, providing temporary housing for women and children fleeing domestic violence. It was beautiful, functional, with private rooms and communal spaces that encouraged healing. Chloe was there, now the shelter's volunteer architect, maintaining the building and planning an expansion. She and Anna weren't friends, would never be friends, but they'd found a way to exist in each other's orbit. Chloe was doing the work, rebuilding her life one act of service at a time. "Thank you all for being here," Anna began, looking at the 20 women gathered in Haven House's common room. "5 years ago, I was where many of you are now, geared, uncertain, wondering if I was making a mistake." She told an abbreviated version of her story, not all the details, not the specifics that might identify her as Isabella Sterling, just the bones of it. A marriage that became a cage, a pregnancy that became a catalyst, a disappearance that became a rebirth. I'm not going to lie and say it was easy. The first 3 months in Astoria were the hardest of my life. I slept in my car. I cried every night. I second-guessed everything. Anna paused, but I kept going, and I found people who helped me. A bookstore owner with a spare room, a friend who asked no questions, a community that chose to protect me. One woman raised her hand. "How did you know you were making the right choice?" "I didn't, not at first. But then my son was born, and I looked at him and realized I'd rather be poor and free than rich and caged. I'd rather struggle and be myself than be comfortable and be nobody." "What if he finds me?" another woman asked, the fear raw in her voice. "Then you have a community who protects you. You have legal resources. You have people who've been where you are and survived. You're not alone. That's the most important thing I learned. You're not alone." After the talk, women approached with questions, with thanks, with their own stories. Anna listened to each one, gave advice where she could, offered resources, provided hope. She remembered being on the other side of this conversation, being the scared woman asking if escape was possible. Now she was the answer to that question. Yes, escape is possible. Freedom is possible. You are possible. At midnight, Anna drove home along the dark coastal highway, the ocean invisible but audible, waves crashing in the darkness. She thought about all the versions of herself she'd been. The passionate law student who believed in justice. The young wife who thought love looked like grand gestures. The ghost in a penthouse who'd forgotten her own name. The woman sleeping in a car, terrified and brave. The mother who gave birth in a storm. The lawyer who saved others by saving herself first. All of those women lived in her still. The scared ones and the strong ones. The broken pieces and the rebuilt whole. She was a cathedral of survival, a library of lessons learned, a testament to the power of walking away. At home, James was still awake, reading in bed. He looked up when she entered. How'd it go? Good. Hard, but good. You're changing lives, you know. I'm just showing them it's possible. They're doing the hard part. James pulled her close. You're pretty remarkable, Anna Marlowe. She smiled at the name, Anna Marlowe. Not Isabella Sterling, not Mrs. Anyone, just herself, claimed and named and free. I'm just a woman who walked away. There's nothing remarkable about that. Yes, James said softly. There is. That night, Anna dreamed of a bus pulling away from Manhattan at dawn, of a skyline disappearing in a rear window, of a woman becoming a ghost, becoming real. She dreamed of storm-battered beaches and handmade cradles and communities built from kindness. She dreamed of all the women she'd helped, fanning out across America, leaving, escaping, surviving, thriving. And she dreamed of a note, written on cream stationery in elegant script. I am gone. Please do not look for me. The most powerful words she'd ever written, the words that saved her life. In the morning, Leo jumped on her phone, and 5 years old and full of energy. Mama, it's pancake day. Anna hugged him, breathing in the little boy's smell of him, the miracle of him. Pancake day it is, baby. They made pancakes together, Leo cracking eggs with intense concentration, James flipping them with practiced ease, Anna pouring juice and setting the table. It was mundane and perfect and everything she'd fought for. After breakfast, Anna walked to her office, the same route she'd walked 5 years ago when she'd been homeless and pregnant and desperate. Now she walked it as a lawyer, as a mother, as a woman who knew her own name. At her desk, she updated her private journal. 43 women helped, 43 women free. And today, number 44 was coming at 10. A woman named Sarah with 2 kids and a husband who called her stupid. A woman who'd found Anna's name on a domestic violence forum, who'd driven 5 hours to ask one question. Is escape possible? Anna looked at her framed note, at the life she'd built from courage, at the community she'd found by being brave enough to be lost first. She knew exactly what she'd tell Sarah. Yes, escape is possible. Freedom is possible. You are possible. And if you have to disappear to find yourself, then disappear. I'll show you how. The door opened. Sarah walked in, scared and hopeful and ready. Anna smiled. Can I help you? 2 years later, the community center in Astoria had never been this crowded. Folding chairs lined the walls, every seat taken, people standing in the back. The local newspaper had sent a reporter. Even the mayor was there, looking slightly uncomfortable in the front row. Anna stood at the podium, 7 months pregnant with her second child, hands resting on her belly. James sat in the front row with Leo, now 7, and Lily, 13. Richard and Jennifer were there with their daughter Emma, 18 months old. Grace and Margaret flanked them like bookends. Eleanor had flown in from Boston, beaming with pride. The banner behind Anna read, Marlowe Foundation Launch, Supporting Women's Legal Defense and Strategic Relocation. Thank you all for being here, Anna began. 7 years ago, I arrived in Astoria with nothing but a suitcase and fear. I slept in my car. I didn't know if I'd survive, if my baby would be okay, if I'd made a terrible mistake. She paused, letting her eyes sweep the crowd. She saw women she'd helped, scattered throughout the audience. Jessica, from 2 years ago, now working as a teacher in Montana, had driven 12 hours to be here. Others she didn't recognize, but who recognized her, women who'd heard about the lawyer in Oregon, who understood. I'm standing here today because people helped me. Margaret gave me a room. Grace gave me friendship. James gave me patience. This community gave me sanctuary, and I want to spend the rest of my life returning that favor. The Marlowe Foundation would provide free legal services to women leaving abusive situations. It would fund strategic relocations, helping women disappear safely and legally. It would offer job training, housing assistance, and therapy. Everything Anna wished she'd had, everything she'd had to figure out alone. We're naming our first scholarship after someone who taught me an important lesson, Anna continued, that even people who hurt us can change. That redemption is possible if you're willing to do the work. That sometimes the people who fail us most spectacularly can become our strongest allies if we give them the chance. She looked at Richard, who shifted uncomfortably. He hadn't known about this. The Richard Sterling Transformation and Scholarship will fund therapy and rehabilitation programs for men working to break patterns of emotional abuse. Because I've learned that hurt people and healed people heal people. Richard's eyes were wet. He mouthed thank you across the room. After the presentation, after the applause and the reception and the countless conversations, Anna found herself on the center's back deck, looking out at the river. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. Chloe appeared beside her. They hadn't spoken in months, though Chloe's work at Haven House continued. Chloe looked different now, softer, more real. I heard about the scholarship, Chloe said. That was generous. It wasn't generosity, it was honesty. Richard isn't the villain of my story. He was just a broken person who broke me. The real villain was the system that taught him women were possessions. That taught me I was only valuable if I was ornamental. We're trying to change that system. I was part of that system too, Chloe said quietly. I saw you as an obstacle, not a person. I know. I'm sorry. I've said it before, but I need to say it again. I'm truly sorry. Anna studied her. Are you happy now? Chloe considered the question. I'm not rich. I'm not important. I'm not Mrs. Anyone, but I'm doing work that matters. I designed my 10th shelter last month. I'm helping build places where women can be safe. So yeah, I think I'm happy. For the first time, maybe ever. Good. That's what I wanted for you. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the river flow toward the ocean. Can I ask you something, Chloe said. Do you ever miss it? The penthouse, the money, the life? Anna laughed. Not even a little bit. I miss the woman I was before I became Mrs. Sterling, the lawyer who fought for people. But that woman, she's back now. Better than before, actually. She has a son and a daughter on the way, and a husband who sees her. She has friends who show up. She has work that matters. That woman doesn't need a penthouse. Inside, Leo's voice called out, Mama, Daddy James says it's time for cake. Anna smiled. I should go. My son is very serious about cake. Anna, Chloe stopped her. Thank you for giving me a chance to become someone better. You did that yourself. I just opened a door. You walked through it. 3 months later, Anna gave birth to her daughter on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in spring. Unlike Leo's dramatic storm entrance, Sarah Grace Marlowe arrived peacefully, surrounded by family in a hospital room overlooking the river. James held his daughter for the first time and cried. Leo, allowed in to meet his sister, was surprisingly gentle, touching her tiny hand with wonder. She's so small, he whispered. You were that small once, Anna told him. Did you love me this much? More. I loved you so much I walked away from everything to keep you safe. Leo considered this. Because love is brave. Yes, baby, love is brave. Richard visited the next day, bringing flowers and a handmade cradle he'd built himself. I wanted to make this one, he explained. James taught me. Anna was touched beyond words. It's beautiful. Richard sat carefully in the chair beside her bed. I never got to do this with Leo. Hold him when he was new. See what he looked like as a newborn. I missed all of it. I know, I'm sorry for that. Don't be. I earned that loss. But I'm grateful you let me earn my way back. He looked at baby Sarah. She looks like you. She has your mother's nose. Sarah inherited it. Richard's eyes widened. You named her after my sister? Sarah showed up when it mattered. She told the truth even though it cost her relationship with you. That took courage. Our daughter should have a name that means courage. Thank you, Richard whispered, for everything, for leaving, for coming back, for showing me what I'd become, for letting me change. You did the hard part. You chose to change. Most people don't. Later, when Richard had left and James had gone home with Leo for dinner, Anna sat alone with her daughter. She thought about the woman she'd been 7 years ago, pregnant and trapped, planning her escape in a walk-in closet. That woman couldn't have imagined this. A second child, born into freedom, a husband who was present, a son who felt safe, a career that mattered, a community that chose to love her. Your brother was born in a storm, Anna told her sleeping daughter. You were born in peace. That's the difference 7 years makes. That's what happens when you're brave enough to save yourself. 5 years later. Leo was 12, Sarah was 5, and Anna was 42 when the documentary filmmaker approached her. He wanted to make a film about women who'd successfully disappeared from abusive situations. Anna's story, carefully anonymized, would be the centerpiece. I need to think about it, Anna told him. That night, she called Richard. They did this now, talked on the phone like old friends, checked in about Leo's soccer tournaments and Emma's preschool plays in the ordinary minutiae of co-parenting. Someone wants to make a documentary, she said, about women who leave, about me. What do you think? I think it could help people, but I also think it could expose me, expose all of us. Will you use your real name, Isabella Sterling? Anna was quiet for a moment. I haven't been Isabella Sterling in 12 years. I don't even remember what she looked like. She looks sad, Richard said, always so sad, even when she smiled. Anna Marlowe doesn't look sad. No, she looks free. Anna decided to do the documentary, but only if they could protect the identities of the women she'd helped. The filmmaker agreed. They filmed over 6 months, documenting Anna's work, interviewing women who'd escaped, showing the underground network of safe houses and legal resources in communities that protected survivors. The film premiered at Sundance 2 years later. The Women Who Walk Away won the Audience Award and sparked a national conversation about emotional abuse, about the courage it takes to about the systems that need to change. Anna watched it with her family in a private screening in Portland. When it ended, Leo, now 14, turned to her. "You're really brave, Mom." "I was really scared," Anna corrected. "But I did it anyway. That's all bravery is, being terrified and doing it anyway." Sarah, 7 years old and feisty, announced, "When I grow up, I'm going to help women too, just like you." Anna hugged her daughter close. "You can be anything you want. That's the point of all of this. You get to choose." 10 years after the vanishing. Isabella Sterling's disappearance had become something of an urban legend in Manhattan social circles. The trophy wife who vanished without a trace. The billionaire who had a breakdown and became a philanthropist. The mistress who ended up designing homeless shelters. The truth was stranger and more hopeful than any legend. Anna Marlowe, age 44, ran the most successful women's advocacy law firm on the West Coast. Her foundation had helped over 300 women relocate safely. Her documentary had inspired similar organizations in 40 states. Richard Sterling, age 50, had started his own foundation focusing on men's mental health and emotional rehabilitation. He split his time between Portland and New York, maintaining his business, but no longer consumed by it. He had dinner with Leo every Tuesday and saw Emma every weekend. He'd married Jennifer in a small ceremony and seemed genuinely content. Chloe Winters, age 41, was the most sought-after architect for women's shelters and safe houses in North America. She'd never remarried, never had children, but found purpose in creating spaces where women could heal. She and Anna weren't close, but they respected each other. Chloe sent Anna a card every year on the anniversary of her firing, thanking her for the destruction that led to reconstruction. Margaret Sullivan, at age 81, still ran the bookstore with Anna's help. She'd written a memoir called The Women We Save, The Women Who Save Us. It became a bestseller in the memoir category. Grace Thompson married her partner and adopted 2 more children. She ran Marlowe Foundation's operations and kept everyone organized. She and Anna were still inseparable, raising their kids together, building the kind of friendship that transcends blood. James Morrison continued building furniture and being the steady presence everyone relied on. He'd built cradles for all the babies born to women the foundation helped. Over 200 cradles, each one a promise of safety. On the 10th anniversary of Isabella's disappearance, Anna stood on the beach where she'd once watched Leo take his first steps. She was alone, having asked everyone for space. She needed to mark this day privately, to honor the woman she'd been and the woman she'd become. She thought about that morning 10 years ago, leaving the Pennant house in darkness, the terror and exhilaration of the bus ride, sleeping in her car, Margaret's kindness, Leo's birth in a storm. Every moment that had led to this one. Her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. "You don't know me, but I heard about your work. I need help. I'm 7 months pregnant and I need to disappear. Can you show me how?" Anna smiled, typing her response. "Yes, come to my office tomorrow at 10. I'll show you how. You're not alone. You're going to be okay, I promise. She stood on the beach as the sun set, watching waves roll in and out, eternal and persistent and unstoppable. Like women, like survivors, like the courage it takes to save yourself. The pregnant wife had vanished 10 years ago. But the woman who walked away, she was still walking, still fighting, still showing others the way to freedom. Isabella Sterling was gone. Long live Anna Marlowe, and every woman brave enough to know her own name.